Preliminary announcements. Any preliminary announcements this evening before we start with the regular part of the meeting? I believe I have none. Good job by our public works crew, though. Our roads were, perfect. They were pretty good this morning, even coming to work. My main trouble was once I hit the Homestead High Level or the Homestead Grays Bridge. That was really backed up, but our streets in Munhall, as I was going in, were fine this morning, and I left about 10 after 7. Roll call.
Councilman Ballas?
Here.
Councilman Ingram?
Here.
Councilman Petrucci?
Here.
Councilman Stein?
Here.
Councilman Tishon?
Here.
Councilman Bodadian?
Here.
President Call.
Here. Okay, notice to all public speakers, just in council. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Must avoid personal references to personalities and personnel-related issues. Our first speaker is the mayor.
So the first subject we want to talk about is at the last workshop meeting, we talked about stormwater management. We had questions on that. I told you all that I would find out what the answers are. And we're curious about stormwater as far as water running onto people's property or running into people's property. And I did speak with Allegheny County Health Department. And their stance is they do have regulations on stormwater, and I'm going to read their Chapter 11 stormwater management rule. Where required, all roofs, paved areas, yards, courts, courtyards, and areas using a topping or finish capable of collecting water shall be drained into a separate stormwater sewer system or a combined sewer system per section AC 1104.2, where such systems are available. If there is no storm or combined sewer available for such drains, then the water from said drains shall be conducted by proper pipes or pipes below the surface of the sidewalk to the street gutter or to a place of disposal satisfactory to the administrative authority, where the local municipality has no ordinance or regulation in place, and in accordance with any other plans or ordinances adopted under the Stormwater Management Act of 1978, October 1st, Public Law 864, number 167, or other ordinances or regulations of the municipality involved. In no case shall water collected surface or stormwater be allowed to drain over sidewalks or driveways or onto adjacent properties where the water can create soil erosion or have adverse on a structure. That's pretty much the general statement of Allegheny County's Health Department stance. And that's a bold statement, if you all listen to me. The problem with the statement is Allegheny County does not enforce this. They say, we can enforce things at certain times. We leave that up to the municipality's discretion to enforce this through your Stormwater Management Act or your code. So if you look through the Munhall Borough Code, we have a pretty thick code. They do have a stormwater management program in here, and in talking with the county, there is a ordinance. The ordinance number coincides with our ordinance here. So back in sure not what date that was. I believe it's 93 or 95. I have it here somewhere. Probably too many papers here. We adopted the ordinance. So if you read our ordinance, we have nothing that speaks about any of these particular ordinance regulations by the county. where it says in here that no water can go over a sidewalk or a driveway. Nothing is spoken in our code about that. So we don't have a policy speaking to that. So my question is then, who does enforce this, and where does this go to? Because if Allegheny County, in speaking with their inspector, their chief inspector for this area, their policy generally is, if you have a discharge line, it can't be discharging within 5 feet of the property line. So within 5 feet of that property line, if it encroaches on that 5-foot property line, then that's a problem, because it's destroying the neighbor's property, or it's encroaching on the neighbor's property. And clearly in her case, this discharge line is discharging onto her sidewalk from her neighbors. And that is a problem. I mean, that has anyone stopped there and looked at her sidewalk? Her sidewalk is destroyed, and that water is discharging onto there. It's freezing. It's thawing. It's freezing. It's thawing. For I don't know how long that's been going on there. So that's a problem. It's not talked to about in our code. So there's we can adopt an ordinance to say, hey, we can't allow that to happen. That's certainly council's decision on adopting such an ordinance. But I don't see it in here. I've read through here. I haven't read specifically every line, but I've looked through our whole portion of what we have on our ordinance, and there's nothing that addresses that. So that's a problem.
So, Mayor, what you're saying, we can't do anything about that right now?
Well, we can't to an extent as far as I see, but I spoke in specifics to the Allegheny County executive who's in charge, the supervisor of this area. And he said in a certain case where it's discharging like that onto her property, they may get involved and write up a violation notice. Now, I talked to an inspector out in the field, and he said we would revert that to Dave Cannon, our ordinance. So you get two different answers. So we need to get something in our ordinance that's a little bit more specific as to searching for an answer to her problem.
Well, do you think that neighbor would be kind enough to pipe it down the street?
I think a neighbor would not do that to another neighbor. Absolutely. So that's the first thing that's been asked of me. That's what I can bring back to council. Go ahead.
Who did you talk to for Allegheny County Health Department? Who was it?
Tom
Ruffin?
Tom Ruffin.
Okay. We had someone call too from the sewer authority just to find out where we're at there. And Mr. Ruffin said what you read, that's just for new construction. That ordinance just applies to new construction. It doesn't regulate anything that's existing already.
Doesn't say anything about new construction.
I'm just telling you what we were told.
Okay.
And that's per Tom Ruffin, who, our manager did talk to, because, the sewer authority does have some, we look into all this stuff also, because, we're taking all the water, all the storm water out of the sanitary system. So she called him, and he said, what you just read, and, it's good language, it only applies to new construction. That's what we were told, sir. Just passing on what we were told.
Well, I was not told that.
Okay.
So I would have to question that, because in here it doesn't say anything about new construction at all, and that's the ordinance.
But I'm just saying that's
the law.
That's what Tom Ruffin said. Yeah, for new
So
construction.
I invite you all to come up with something to protect our citizens, because it's not in here. And the health department can pick and choose what they want to do. If they want to come out here and enforce this, they certainly can. Are they going to do that? Probably not. They're going to refer it to our ordinance officer.
Did you ever talk to your neighbor about this pump?
I
pumping the
actually,
water?
last year, I don't speak to him anymore.
Well, then you haven't talked to him.
But Mr. Perlacki across the street said to me, Sandy, if you're willing to pay for this, and then we'll get, like, my son-in-law and stuff like that to dig it up and that. And I said, I'll pay for it. He wouldn't do it. And I am not going to pay for it now. He would not do it.
But that's not going to get rid of your sidewalk problem.
Right.
Unless you speak with him.
I was going to pay for the drain to be put in. We were going to dig a drain.
Well, I don't
and
see
drain
why
it.
you should pay for it unless you put a new sidewalk in, then
No, I know.
would tilt the sidewalk.
I know, but
the other
I
way.
was so desperate, I'm telling you, I can't get out of my house because of the ice.
Well, I know, I was
mean, you
down
saw.
there, I was down there to see it. But, like he's saying right there, our hands are tied, you'd have to talk to the neighbor.
Yeah,
What I would think you should do is I would call Tom Ruffing's office.
all right.
I spoke to him personally. I would ask to file a complaint and say, I've got a complaint here. My neighbor's pipe is discharging onto my sidewalk. It's not 5 feet from my sidewalk. It's 2 inches from my sidewalk. He may come out and file a complaint. And that's what I would do.
That's what we
It's
can,
not
Good advice.
You know,
nothing we can do, other than that, really.
That's real good advice for you.
yeah. Because I spoke with him and he said, I talked to him several times, I called him. And I went before him again and made a phone call to him and said, listen, I just want to go over this with you before I have a meeting with you all. I want to make sure that I'm correct in what I'm talking about because I don't want to be called a liar. And he said, specifically with that pipe coming out and discharging like that, he may get involved.
Okay.
So I would call him.
And you'll give me
I'll give you his
number.
number.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay, so I also made a request to speak about the recreational topic that we started to talk about at the last meeting. We got cut off. It was a long meeting at the workshop. We spoke about the recreational board and about summer programs, and I made the comment, if you remember, how I thought that was an important thing. I called Harvey Ingalls on Friday to speak with him and let him know about the enterprise zone meeting that we had for Monday. When I talked to Harvey on Friday, he was in a meeting with Joe Ballas and Mr. Petruzzi on a recreational meeting. At that time, I don't know what you guys were discussing. I would have liked to have been invited to that meeting, which I told Harvey at the time. I wish I'd have known about that because I should have been invited to a meeting like that. Agreed?
You're not on the committee. Why should you have been invited?
Okay. So there was a meeting then, you did have a meeting.
We had a meeting,
And
we
you
sure
didn't
did.
invite the mayor.
No, we didn't invite you. You're not on the committee.
Okay.
Real simple.
Okay. Thank you very much,
You're
Joe.
welcome.
Okay. So, I wanted to speak about the summer programs a little bit. I think it's an important program. We talked about that at the recreational meeting from the board that we have. And I've attended all the recreational meetings from the new year out, and it would have been nice to have been informed about your meeting too, Joe. So, as the mayor, I should be informed of meetings that you're having, and I'm entitled, and by law, I need to be invited to the meeting. Just so you know that.
Show me where our
So-
code says that, and I will.
So let me speak.
Show me the borough code.
So, at this prior meeting we talked about this game that we were talking about pushing, and it was brought up by our president of the board there. And I don't know how you pronounce it, Pantecue tournament. I think
My
that's
French
how.
isn't real good.
That's
Yeah.
close enough.
I think it's something
Yes.
like bocce, right?
It's like a bocce ball,
Yeah,
and his presentation was very good, and his thought was that we'd maybe put this on a property up at the Vine Street property. I'm just going to pass this around to you. This is the only example I have, so I would like it back. And there's just a little blow up here of the Google sky of the Vine Street. If you want to take a look at it, pass it around.
Mayor, may I ask where you got that from?
I got that from our president of our rec board.
Oh, okay.
We had a meeting there. I was at the meeting. You were not at that meeting, but
No.
Mr. Ballas was there
Yeah.
Got one.
at that meeting. And I've tried to
That's
attend
one where you got
the meetings and find out what's going on. And so I think the summer programs should be definitely talked about, and I thought that we would talk about that at the workshop because time is running out for that to happen. And I have people that were interested in trying to get involved in that. I wanted to bring that to your attention a little bit. So may I ask what you guys talked about at the meeting on Friday? Was there anything that you'd like to share with us?
I think Mr. Rennie.
I have a report. I mean,
Go ahead, he's on.
if you would wait,
Speak to him.
I have a complete report on everything we talked about.
Well, that's nice because, you know,
Thank you.
that report is nice, but I would have liked to have been a part of that decision-making process.
Well, let's put this way, you weren't invited.
You weren't invited, you're not part of the committee.
And I
You weren't
understand that.
invited.
And maybe
I know,
this,
well, maybe
maybe
next time they'll invite you.
maybe Mr. Vašević might have a little say in this,
Well,
what's done and what's not done, because I think that we have public laws, and let me start reading some of them to you guys.
You know,
We're
Mayor,
not gonna
I
do
did
that.
check with Greg Vašević, and I asked him the question straight up. Did the meeting need to be advertised? Greg said no. It's a committee meeting, and only 3 council members can be there. The mayor can be there, but it has to be, but the mayor is only required to be there, he said, if there is a quorum of council there. And 3 was not a quorum. I asked him about minutes. He said, well, the minutes are not required, but they are optional if you want to do them. I mean, personally, I think Mr. Ballas does probably have some minutes.
I don't have
Says,
minutes, but I have a
minutes,
report.
but a report. I
Yeah.
like to hear. Report's fine, yeah. So that is what I got from your brother, Nick.
I agree.
So let me read what the state of Pennsylvania says.
Okay.
The General Assembly finds that the right of the public to be present at all meetings of agencies and to witness the deliberation, the policy formation, decision-making of agencies is vital to the enhancement and proper functioning of the democratic process. And that secrecy in public affairs undermines the faith of public in government and the public effectiveness in fulfilling its role in a democratic society. So it clearly states right there in Pennsylvania Sunshine Act that the public has the right to be present at all meetings of all agencies.
It's not a meeting if it's not a quorum, though. That's the problem.
It is a quorum, and let me finish.
A quorum, if 3 is not a quorum, but, sorry, go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt.
So the body or an agency, the body and all committees thereof are authorized by the body to take official action or render advice on matters of agency business. So they have a quorum. When they have the 3 of these gentlemen together, they advertise meetings. So now they choose to have a special meeting, and then they choose not to invite the public to their meeting, nor the mayor to their meeting, or anyone else to their meeting. That's what I think is a violation of the Sunshine Law.
But you used the word quorum, you just used it now. And a group of 3 does not constitute a quorum. Would you agree with me on that?
I disagree with you on that.
Well,
I
I'm not
disagree
permitted
with
to come to the meeting because
mathematics.
I would make 4. I'm
with
not permitted to come to the committee meeting.
with their
And
board.
just one other point. Let me just finish my point,
Go ahead.
Mayor. And then the other issue is, in the section you just read, is to take official action. And certainly, I think you would agree with me on this, that a group of 3 cannot take any action.
They're not, but they're deliberating. They're deliberating, and they're forming a policy, and they're decision making. So they're forming a policy.
There's no decision making. A group of 3. I mean,
Okay,
we
I'm
disagree
sorry.
on,
They're
on
deliberating policy.
But if it's not a quorum, it does not constitute a meeting. That's what I think. And certainly a non-quorum, 3 or less, cannot take any action. They cannot make any decisions.
Mhm.
They're just discussing.
Okay.
So I think under my understanding of what a quorum is, you are not entitled to be there.
Well, I spoke with people from the state of Pennsylvania, and they tend not to agree with your decision.
Could be.
Um,
You could always file a challenge to the Open
I
Records
am
Office.
formally asking for a challenge.
Well, you have to file that with the Open Records
How do I
Office.
do that?
I can't give you advice on that.
Why not?
Because you'd be challenging this council. That's the client.
So then I need to have a separate attorney speak to them then? I thought you were my attorney as well.
Work for the council.
Your own people.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So I wanted to make that clear. So there you go. So
A committee is, from my understanding, is when you have a committee meeting, you discuss things, then you bring it back to council, and you discuss it with the entire body.
And there's nothing wrong with having a committee meeting. And it's advertised, and it should be advertised to the general public. Committee meetings are not private meetings. And it says so right in the Sunshine Law Act. I ask you all to read it. It's clearly in there. And it clearly states that.
With 3 people?
It needs to be a public meeting.
Yeah, but
It
it's
needs
not-
to
if
be
it's not a
open to
quorum,
the
then you
public.
don't- If it's not a quorum, then you don't have to advertise it.
You're having a secret meeting.
It's not a secret.
It is a secret
I
meeting.
disagree with that.
Committee meeting.
But doesn't our Congress and our legislators and our senators, don't they have committee meetings
all
all the
meet.
time?
Always.
Where
They
it's
all
just
meet.
your legislators involved. Where
The
it's just a
General
small 3 or 4 or
Assembly
5.
finds the right of the public to be present at all meetings of agencies. If you read the definition of an agency, it's all committees.
What's the definition of a meeting?
Well, I'll read it to you.
We have a
Let me
quorum.
find it. Let me find it here for you. Obviously, this is certainly an argument that's happened before.
I have never been a part of an argument like this. I'm
For
sorry.
40 years.
Well, maybe that's what's wrong with our town.
I think there's nothing wrong with this.
I think there's
This town
something
is
very wrong.
running so efficiently.
Very wrong
in the
with
last
this town.
3.5 years. It's unbelievable.
I think I might disagree.
And people are raking some muck that isn't there.
Can I say something, please?
Mr. Brennan has the floor.
Okay, when
I have
Mr.
the
Brennan,
floor.
when you're done, may I say something?
I'm not running the meeting,
Okay,
but I think you're allowed to speak. I would think you're allowed to speak.
okay.
So what's considered a meeting?
I think this is considered a meeting, what we're doing right here tonight. This is a meeting.
What's considered a meeting? The law defines a meeting as any prearranged gathering of an agency which is attended or participated in by a quorum of the members of an agency held
Quorum.
for the purpose of
Say
deliberating
that about
agency
11 more
business.
times.
Quorum.
Note, the sunshine of, well, you guys don't want to, you want to interrupt me while I'm
No, I'm
talking to
talking
you?
to you.
I mean, come
I
on.
apologize.
I'm not screaming and yelling at anyone. I'm trying to bring a point to you guys. I'm trying to make the issue of being open and having open meetings, and you guys are going to interrupt me and talk to me like I'm an idiot. I don't appreciate that at all. I didn't interrupt any of you. The people certainly want to be invited to the meetings. I know I do. Note that the sunshine applies anytime a quorum deliberates agency business or takes official action, no matter the physical location, deliberations. Use of the term prearranged does not allow agencies to thwart the intent of the Sunshine Act simply by holding unscheduled discussions about agency business. So I go back to my statement before. When you read about what a meeting is and what an agency is any body or any, let me read what an agency is. Who's OG's in me?
Not yet, I didn't.
You did?
Not yet.
Not yet? Thanks. Think I have every right to ask these questions? Don't I?
You asked how I answered.
An agency, and let me read it to you. The body and all committees thereof authorized by the body. So every committee that we have is an agency. And if you have 3 committee members that are part of that agency, 3 members that are part of that commission or whatever it is, that is the quorum of that committee. And they're meeting there. You can't have a meeting. I can't have a meeting by myself and say I'm having a meeting of
Don't these towns get together and have mayor meetings? Don't all the mayors get together and have a meeting?
I haven't been invited to any mayor meetings. Don't know that yet.
But I think we just have a difference on the quorum is the holdup there. And the legal advice that we get from our solicitor is a committee meeting of a committee can just, and they did do good work in the committee from what I've heard so far. They have done good work, and Mr. Ballas will report later today.
So
it's a quorum of just that subcommittee of council.
Correct.
I don't know if that.
And that should be open to the public. The public has the right to see what they're doing. It's pretty self-evident. So, I will speak to, I guess, another solicitor
I don't
then.
think so, but that's my opinion. I don't think.
I know that.
Well, Mayor, I will tell you that to me, it's just as obvious that a committee of three is not a quorum. It's a committee of three of this council. Unless there is a majority of this council meeting, it's not a meeting under the very definition that you just read. Your definition, which you just recited twice, is that a meeting is when a quorum is present. Quorum of this council. This council is made up of all of these people. If you break them down, they're no longer a council. They're either a quorum or not. So when these three meet or those three meet, it simply isn't a quorum, just simple mathematics.
Okay.
You can't slap the label of a committee on it because that committee can't do anything. They have no decision-making ability. They cannot enact any legislation. They can't do anything without the other four in the room or the other five.
So, Mr. Solicitor, then I have a question for you. So one of our councilmen sends out an email and emails all of our councilmen on that and discusses business, agency business. Is that a violation of the Sunshine Law?
I'd have to see the email. I know what the
Well, this is going on as well in our town, and we talk about
But generally, I would say,
we talk about meetings and having meetings in public, and then we talk about emails, and we talk about decisions that are going to be made, and we put it out there for all the more than 5 or 4 on the email. That's a violation of the Sunshine Law Act. And Joe and I have gotten into a heated argument about this. I've talked to the people of the state of Pennsylvania about this. That is a violation of the Sunshine Law Act. I talked to them about exactly this subject about committee meetings being open to the public, and that is a violation of the Sunshine Law Act. So we have definitely 2 difference of opinions going on here. And I'm just bringing it up to the councilmen so that they know that I have a different opinion on the way they're conducting themselves. And I think that I'm going to find out what the legal ramifications are, because I feel that it's wrong to have a secret meeting, not talk to the general public and invite them about it, and then come and collaborate together and then come to a council meeting. That's not the way America's council meetings are supposed to be run.
They're not secret meetings.
They are secret meetings. They're supposed to be open to the public.
They're going to be open to the public.
Tell me when one occurred and who was there.
Last Friday.
I was there.
He was there. He was there, and they were there.
There was 3 of them.
That's 3 of
Well,
them.
that was a committee meeting.
Yeah.
And that committee meeting needs to be open to the public.
It will be right
I
now.
don't think they would
We
object
let
to
him
that,
talk.
but I don't think it's so.
And it needs to be advertised, and it needs to go before. And if you're having a special meeting, which this was a special meeting, they need to advertise it 24 hours in advance. And that's the way the state of Pennsylvania law is.
Well, I'd like to see you bring it back.
Yeah.
I just did.
No, you said quorum 4 times. A quorum of 7 is 4.
Forget about quorum
The
then.
subject.
Let's just forget about quorum, and I'll read it to you one more time.
You don't have to read it to me one more time.
We better.
I'm not going to have a public meeting tonight.
This is our public meeting.
We've listened to it, we have an opinion from the solicitor, from the attorney, and
The General Assembly finds the right of the public to be present at all meetings of agencies, period.
I bet you that I couldn't, let's say the state legislator was having a committee meeting. I bet you I couldn't walk in.
I'll bet you could.
I bet you I couldn't. I said if there was a special meeting of the legislator of Pennsylvania, I don't think I could attend.
It applies to them too.
I don't think I could attend that meeting.
I think
they
you could.
would throw me out. They did the sergeant of arms.
All right, I rest my case.
Mr. President, can we get on with the meeting?
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much.
Okay, reports of borough officials. Mayor, do you have any more report?
I do. I do. I do. Can I catch my mind for a minute and have someone else, because I just I need to catch my mind. Let me go after the solicitor.
Okay.
I don't have anything to report.
Okay, let's have you go after the manager. He has a long one, so that'll give us some
Okay.
time.
I won't go through the whole.
Hit the high spots.
Liquid fuels, did the audit last about 3 weeks ago, and we will have the money, $324,222.65 will be put in our account on Tuesday. And believe me, it is much needed. So if everyone can pay their taxes early in April, will be much appreciated. 2017 DCED reports are all completed. The only other report we're waiting for is our audit. Allegheny Banner Program, Friday the 23rd, this Friday, we're getting an award for a banner program from the Allegheny County Executive, Richard Fitzgerald. Also on Friday, we, couple councilmen asked, and we were obliged to, by Munhall Borough, to go to their borough building and do a tour of the borough building. So all council and mayor are invited. We talked about in the workshop last week about the local investors, real estate investors. Steve Shapinka sent me a formal email inviting all council and the mayor to his house at a date that we can schedule to see what kind of work that he's doing down there and others. And
Joe, is this that gentleman that remodels these houses?
yeah, yes, sir. I met with on Dixon and Boone. Seems to be a big project, and I was down there last Friday with the Allegheny Conservation District looking at it, see if we get some grant money to expedite that area. 537, 539 East 9th Avenue has been demolished.
Great ride.
It wasn't that easy, wasn't it?
Cleaned up.
It's still being here.
It's not done. It's down, but it's not completed. It will be completed. Donna, $469,865.84.
Thank you.
Yeah, approximately.
Approximately. And parking signs on Main Street, would you like to discuss that?
Yes.
Councilman voted in.
Yes, I would. I was approached by a few businessmen up on Main Street, and they would like to have 2-hour parking signs reinstalled up there, semi-enforced, because people are parking up there, catching a bus, what was witnessed by a few people, and going to work and leaving their car up there all day. So I'm requesting that we put the 2-hour parking signs back up there. And as far as other things, there's I know we've been kind of off track a little bit here due to the property down on Waterfront and the sewer issues that we got that nobody's really been talking about things going on in the borough as far as like the parking signs and the deplorable alleys that we have and landlords that are not keeping up with their properties, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of issues going on here that needs to be addressed, and I don't think that we've been addressing them lately. All the attention's been going to the last few months, been going down to that property on the waterfront, and a lot of things are being forgotten. So I'm bringing up about the parking signs, and I'm making a request that council okays it, put them 2-hour parking signs back up there.
Just on the business end.
Business end.
We went 4 years ago, I came to council and asked about putting in 2-hour parking signs up there. And I asked you, Chief Campbell, about them signs. Remember they were parked on Miller Avenue because a friend of mine owned a business up there. All right? They were parking on Miller Avenue. Well, that's a side street. You said you couldn't put them there.
No, I can't. You can put them wherever you want. I can't put them anywhere.
Right. Okay. But you said who's going to enforce it? But I went 4 years ago and asked for them signs up there, Rich. And all of a sudden now, maybe somebody else come and approach you. Now we're going to put signs up there. Where the guy that I knew, he wanted them there. We couldn't put them there. But now we're going to put them there.
We haven't decided on doing anything.
Well, I understand. I understand. It never got this far. 4 years ago.
I think they said besides parking with 2 hours, you would have to mark the tires or something to see if they parked there. I don't know how we'd find out they were
Chocolate
2 hours.
towers, that's typically
That's
done,
what I
like
mean,
I said.
you know, that's sort of
Right.
stupid myself.
But there was a few people that witnessed people parking up there and jumping on the bus and going to town and going to
I
work.
see them every morning,
Yeah,
park my
happens.
cousin's old
That's
place.
happened.
Park right there, jump on a bus and they go.
I've had a few business owners up there request we put meters on Main Street. I'm sure that's not been popular with everybody, but I did, Larry from Pizza Company told me that 2 years ago.
Well, can we at least put the 2-hour parking signs up there? That's what I'm asking.
One thing we gotta be sure, though, is we gotta make sure, because it is a split district, there's business and residents, that residents will have an opportunity to have,
Well, we can give the
you know,
residents a sticker.
some
to
type
put
of
on their
sticker or
mirror.
tag to put on their cars.
How would you enforce that, chief? Thank you.
If I need a motion, I'll put that into a
If you
motion.
decide to put them up there, we'll figure out a way to do it. It's like I said, to have someone up there dedicated to doing that all day is probably not a
Will
reality.
that cut into our work orders? As far as,
To our daily activities, I mean, you know, we could set someone aside for, you know, an hour, whatever. We'll do what we need to do to
Try to keep it up.
enforce it. Like I said, I'm not gonna pull someone off or answering calls to sit up there and chalk tires, but
that's all I
I'll do
want
whatever
to
we need to
know.
do.
That's all I want to know.
The only thing I would say is make sure the ordinance is in place to put those signs
Sounds
back
up.
up. Nick, they were there at one time, I think they were just removed about 5 years ago. So I'm guessing the ordinance still applies. I don't know if it vacates because we took it down years ago.
The ordinance is still there, it still applies. And I want to read it, be safe, but if it was, as long as it was never repealed,
No.
it's still valid.
I'm just saying, I just have.
So you would not need a ordinance.
I'll get that to you.
We're talking from Listax up to Park School.
I think that is to be determined.
Well, the business district is what was.
I think what you're gonna need to do, there's, you know, even in the business part, there are people that live there.
Right.
You're gonna have to give them
Cross them out.
serious, you know, a month or so notification that this is gonna happen. You know, someone could work night turn and live above,
Right,
you know, one of the apartments right there in the main business district and sleep all day and leave their car out front. I mean, you know, not necessarily someone, they're all not going on a bus.
Well, like you have Morrison's, who is a business, but they also rent there.
So I mean, yeah, you're gonna have to
She's also
figure out like a permit way, you know, how to
Sticker,
do
maybe?
that. Right, something. We used to do that on the 8th Avenue and
Do
No,
you
what
it was a
about-
nightmare.
No, what about the side streets? You're talking about Main Street.
Right.
What about the people park on Miller Avenue?
And that was my next point, to do that, you're probably gonna have to do one block off of Main Street on both sides of the street.
Because they'll park here then.
But that's mostly residential.
Right.
But
they
you're
park
gonna
there.
have the people that are parking, you know, in front of the post office and leaving their car all day. If they can no longer do that, they're gonna pull on Miller Avenue and park there all day. So like I said, one block off, if you're gonna do it one block off Main as well.
That's what
In my
happened.
opinion.
That's what happened on 8th Avenue. You know, when you had the meters on 8th Avenue, you flushed people to 9th and 10th,
Right.
and then the parking problems were there.
You're just pushing the problem somewhere
You
else.
just push it, right? You're just pushing the problem.
Oh, do I need to put that in the motion? Or I'll make a motion if I have to.
Mr. Vashik said that it is already an ordinance stating that, so.
The chief told, you had the signs before, I was just told, so I'm assuming that there is an ordinance about that. If it was not repealed, then you can remove and place the signs at council's pleasure, but I have not seen the ordinance.
But the one block off Main Street, doesn't have signs there, just down the main road.
Then we're gonna have a lot of problems with people who live there.
Oh, even if you go one block off of Main Street, that would be good too, wouldn't it?
I would say you're gonna have to do that, or you're gonna have everyone who does what you suggest they're doing, they're just gonna move to the side street and block up everyone else's
If
park.
anything, it'll be a deterrent, you know.
And the next meeting, we'll have people here from Grace and West Virginia, reconnecting streets.
See what effect
Well,
it has.
what's one block off? Because some streets pretty long before you hit a perpendicular street.
Right, there's an alley on both sides of Main Street, on the other side of the businesses.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it's only 3 parking spots between what would be considered the first block, after that alley, on both sides of Main Street.
But like, there's no alley up by Botsford, so theoretically, one block is all of Botsford.
There's an alley.
Oh, then you're right, there is an alley. Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that.
I would think the Main Street Business District maybe come up with their proposal too, what they would want, I don't know if we would want to get in touch with, the business district, they give their, what they would like to see. But, anything else?
No, thank you.
Is that all? Okay, Mayor's report.
Okay. One of the things that has come up to me is the Munhall Gardens people, they're seriously asking me questions about one-way streets up in Munhall Gardens while we're talking about signs and traffic and whatnot. I want council to think about this, and I haven't talked to the chief about this yet. I would like to have sat and talked to him about this. It might make sense to put one-way streets up there, in and out, a couple ways. I wanted to bring that to your attention. More than 1 or 2 people have asked me about that, so bringing it out there for them. I've been stopping around through other areas, and I always make it a point to stop in municipal buildings. I was in Green Tree Borough last week. I stopped there and got some of their borough newsletters. I've brought it up to you guys about newsletters in the past. Green Tree Borough has 4 every year, and they're pretty good. And I would recommend we do this. I think it's a great idea to get a message out. This one here, pass one around if you'd like. It starts off with the president of council. He has a letter in here in the front, and they got all kinds of things in here. They have pie expenditures on their budget, on what they're spending on, what they're doing. It's really done well. There's a police car here. Public safety has a chair. They have a little letter in here. It's a way of talking to the public. If you want to pass them around, you can do that if you like.
I think it's a good idea.
There are ways that it can be done and done. Green Tree, they do it themselves. They don't make any payments or they don't do any advertising in theirs. But there are advertising companies that can do advertisements, sell advertisements, and it could be done at no cost to the borough.
Other than postage, the printing would all be
right. So I think that's a good thing. I'm not privy to who does that or how it's done. Green Tree takes this on to themselves. So those were a couple other items, but I wanted to make sure I brought that up about Munhall Gardens. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Report of the engineer. Think about Chuck. Yeah, Colin, report engineer.
Safe Routes to School is around the corner. Joe and I are going to be meeting with PennDOT in the next week, Joe. And we're going to be talking about the borough's responsibility in construction management. And PennDOT has indicated that the borough will be eligible for reimbursement for all expenditures that we might incur during that 2018 paving project. Been out here a couple times over the last week. I think initially we were a little ambitious in the amount of street that we were going to get paved, and versus what our budget was. Joe and I have been looking into some other alternatives for paving. One of those is micro surfacing, and it is a lot more cost effective, about roughly more than a third of the price of conventional paving that we did last year. We think it might be a good candidate for some of our roads, and we're going to look into that. And also, Joe, did you mention the low volume road grant opportunity down
That
on
was
Dixon Street?
that was a meeting I had Friday with the Allegheny County Conservation District with that grant, that was what the meeting was about. To look to see if that would even qualify for something like that.
Yeah, I don't want to steal your thunder. Joe orchestrated that, but potentially we're looking into a grant to get some sidewalk, maybe some streetscape, paving done down on Dixon, 8th Avenue. And there's at least the opportunity for some cost sharing potentially with the county on that. There was some talk about stormwater and our stormwater ordinance. I did just want to give everyone an update about what's going on in Allegheny County. Allegheny County, like all the other counties in Pennsylvania, is subject to Act 167. That act passed in 1978. That basically puts the county is responsible for a stormwater management plan. The county kicks that stormwater management plan down to the municipality. In 2018, January 2018 or December 2017, Allegheny County adopted a model stormwater ordinance that they suggest that all municipalities adopt. That is currently being reviewed by DEP. Once it's reviewed and blessed by DEP, counties or the municipalities that are applicable have 6 months to adopt the ordinance. We've been talking about that here in Munhall for some time now with our MS4 permit. So I just, that's the update. It's under consideration, and that's going to be a county-wide thing. Local amendments can be added, but just so you know, we are cognizant of what's going on, looking into it. Any questions?
Colin, you gave us a report last week on the property down at the waterfront. Did you go into a little deep, explain it a little, like dumb it down a little bit?
So it's kind of, in all disclosure, it's a little over my head too. So
okay, that's why I asked to dumb it down a little bit. When Junior Achievers owned the property that is now the property in Munhall Borough, they had what is called an environmental site assessment done on the property. So there's 2 phases. Phase 1 is they look at historically what was the use of the property, what were the previous functions, who's the owner, is there anything to be concerned about environmentally. Phase 2, they go in and they sample things on the property to see, follow up on areas of concern. So, Junior Achievers hired KU to do a phase 1 and a phase 2 environmental study on this property. At the time, the declared use of the property was not residential, it was not commercial, it was a drainage swale. So
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that it was what?
A drainage swale.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So the testing that was done and the opinions of our experts was limited on the site. But of the testing that was performed, there were 4 soil samples done on the current borough property, the former Junior Achievers property. Those 4 soil samples all tested high for lead. There was also PCB found. There was no groundwater study, et cetera, et cetera. So what our environmental professional specialists, the people who specialize in this work, what they recommended was if the borough intends or, to develop this property or to lease the property, they should, dig in deeper, look at what we have, do further testing, and then potentially meet with DEP to go into a process that's called Act Two. And Nick, stop me if I'm saying anything out of line
Well,
here.
I was thinking about that. If the borough wanted to sell or lease it, before they, and maybe this is out of my area, but I would think they could sell or lease it as long as they disclose what we know.
Well,
not develop. If they're saying, I'm going to sell it to John Smith.
I think if they develop or lease it, it's an issue. If they sell it, it's not an issue.
Right. Sell
If
it, except
I misspoke, that's my fault.
But these people would have to know what's wrong with that property before you sell it.
If the borough chose to sell the property, they would disclose this to the developer.
If they wouldn't be required to do any more sampling or testing. But,
Yeah.
as
And if
were
you put a
saying-
parking lot over the top of this whole site, maybe it's not an issue. And, you know, if it's something else, maybe it is an issue. But you have to determine the use of the property to determine what the issues may or may not be. So the Act Two process, and again, stop me if I'm saying anything out of line. It's a voluntary process. It's through the state, but basically, a developer, property owner would go into the process, and they would disclose any problems. They would work with DEP to mitigate any of those problems, and then once the problems were mitigated, it would essentially absolve the property owner from any liability. Yes.
I got a question. Is there anything that says in them studies that you have that there has to be so many feet of a solid base before you put anything on that property?
That would be more like if you were the engineer and you were developing there. I'm not aware of what was said in the study. If there's subsurface problems and stuff like that related to actually building a building there.
Right, I think the answer may change on what you're going to use it for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
pretty much what you're saying is we need to do more sampling, or we need to do more testing, or someone needs to do more testing before anything can be done.
Well, no, not until you decide what you want to do with it.
But if we sell it, we don't have to do nothing.
Right. Act Two is a voluntary program. What I think I would recommend, and what I think our solicitor would recommend, would be to mitigate any potential liability, that we would be subject to.
Decide what you want to do with it first. For instance,
Yeah.
if you're going to just sell it as is, and hey, to the public, this is what we know of it, then you don't have to do anything.
Exactly.
If someone you find a buyer who's going to take it, they're on notice, then there's nothing to do.
Without a cost, I mean, even non-residential versus residential, and it's somewhat of a gray matter where parks, recreational facilities, all that fit in, but even that matters. So there's different state health standards for residential properties than there are for commercial properties. So you have to determine what the use of the property is before you can go into any of this.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And if you guys have any other further questions on it, I'm glad to facilitate. I can have Doug from our office come out. And he's a lot more versed in all of this than I am.
I'm good,
But
thank you.
That's 10,000 feet.
So I'd like to speak on that subject as well, because I called KU Resources, who did the study, and they're scientists that actually did the scientific studies and testings on all this, because it is above my head as well. And speaking with Mark Patrick, he was in charge of this, I believe he's in charge of this study that was done out there. And there were 15 soil sample sites that were taken throughout the waterfront, just so you know. And there was only one soil site that was high. And that was soil site number 13, SB 13. So it wasn't all four, it was just one.
4 were on the borough property. There was 15 total.
4 sites were taken.
Yes.
On the borough property. Out of all the 15 that were taken, only one was high. in
There was
lead
one that
content.
was 4 times.
That was SB 13.
Yes, and there was 3 other, all exceeded the allowable
That's
state
not,
health
that's not what I was told by Mr. Patrick. And in reading the soil samples here, let me just read you the summary of phase 2. You all should have it from last week when it was handed out to us. The sampling program was developed to assess the 6 RECs identified through the phase 1 ESA process. And they speak in terms here that is not proper for everyone to understand. But they're testing, and if you look, and I have the study here, they're testing for all bromide, anything that you can think of is in here. So, the investigation was conducted January 14th and included the collection of 28 soil samples. The results of the phase 2 investigation indicated that lead was above the applicable screening level in the property surface values 0 to 2 foot BGS of SB 13. That's that one section, 13. And if you look on your map in here, it will show you right where it's at in here. So it's in there. When lead concentrations were evaluated via risk-based methodology, this constituent was not found to propose an unacceptable risk to current or future human health or the environment. The analytical results obtained during the investigation, that means the scientific results, indicated that no constituents present in the subsurface soils of 2 to 15 foot bags, or whatever that meaning means, exceeds applicable screening values. According to the SPLP results, none of the leachate concentrations in the soil exceeded the Act 2, which you're talking about, non-residential use aquifer MSCs, and therefore do not adversely affect the underground quality conditions of the property. And furthermore, I had a lengthy conversation with him about Act 2 environmental resources and what that means. And what that does mean, is exactly what you said. An Act 2 study or an Act 2 blessing by the state of Pennsylvania says, hey, we've tested this property and it's fine. You should have no environmental problems at all. And in speaking with him, I'm glad you brought it up, was none of the waterfront has gone through. Are you guys listening to me, or are you guys going to ignore me? Act 2 has not been done anywhere through the whole waterfront, Joe. Nowhere in the waterfront has Act 2 been done. I'm just letting you know. Because I know you're very much in favor of safety down there.
You got that right.
And I do too. And in speaking with Mark Patrick, who represents the scientific staff there, he said he'd be more than happy to come and speak to Munhall Borough about this. And furthermore, he said, Munhall should have got this report when it was put out. We should have had this. Why we didn't have it, I don't know. And I'm not pointing the finger at anyone saying why we didn't get it, but this should have been in our hands 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, whenever the study was done. And furthermore, the United States has programs for brownfield remediation. And if there was any remediation that needed done, there's monies out there for that, just for industrial sites, which I'm sure you professionals know much more about it than me. I'm just a simple layman. But there are EPA money out there for it, ISR monies for it, whatever ISR means, industrial site renovation, I think it is, of some sort. Is that correct?
Remediation.
Thank you. Industrial site remediation. There's monies out there for that to be done if it's needed. This study says it doesn't need to be done, Joe. Just so you know, if you read it. I called them. I went over the study with them. They said there's not much going on here but one site, one boring. And that tested hot. And like you had said, if you do something with the property and you put a building on it, or you put a pavement over it, that seals
It
that.
may not be an issue, but our professionals, my experts that I rely on for this said it's inconclusive. They did not say it's free and clear. They said the intended use in that study was a drainage swale, a park, a recreational facility, a commercial development, a borough building, whatever it might be. Residential is different than a drainage swale.
Right, and
So it's held to different standards.
Just let me tell you that the testing that they said that they did was for residential use. And I challenge you all to call him. Have him come here. He'll talk to us. It can't hurt. They did the test. They have the scientists. They did it. They'd be more than happy to talk to you.
Rick, did you see that thing that I had them put in your folder?
I haven't gone to read it yet. What is it?
Remember last workshop I asked John Hoosier when I said, I want to find out why Junior Achievement got rid of this property and everything.
You find out?
Yes, sir. It was donated by Continental Real Estate, as is. Significant cost to develop ground. Needed to do a dynamic compaction, a method that is used to increase the density of the soil when certain surfaces contains most made other methods inappropriate. It is a method that is used to increase the density of the soil deposits. Too many gaps and voids in surface to build on. They had one guy, a benefactor, and he backed out of donating money for the place. Okay, that was to the JA. Did JA ever try to sell the property? They tried this several times and only had one person who wanted to put a small detail top on it, but then he pulled out. In other words, they would give, and the Allegheny County Real Estate assessed the value of the land down there at $275,000. Okay.
Good.
I just thought I'd put it in your.
Thank you. I haven't seen that.
What's that
I'll read it.
dynamic compacting?
I
what are they?
think Joe would, I don't know.
They vibrate it, they blow it up.
You would have a huge vibratory compactor, essentially travel over the top of the site. And it would, if there were a lot of voids, there's foundations, there's
tunnels in there.
a tunnel, yeah, exactly.
You
There
gotta
would
fill all that
be
in.
unsuitable to build on. So you would do that, and then you would come back over and fill it in.
Okay.
But I made sure you got
pretty. Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds pretty. Robbie.
Yes.
As the mayor mentioned, we did all get this report last week.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
We did.
also in the report, the average lead concentration for the 4J parcel surface samples is 516.5 mg/kg. I'm not sure what that means. The surface soil average, 516.5, exceeds both the PA SHS non-residential MSC of 450 mg/kg and the EPA screening level for child exposure on residential sites. Additional data review and/or site characterization sampling may be required to reassess the potential lead concentrations in the J parcel. The point I'm trying to make is, Colin's the closest thing to an expert in this room. Any of us trying to interpret this is folly. You could split this 10 different ways if you wanted to. I would just defer, for the safety of the residents, however we decide to use this, to have it looked at a little further.
You know what, the mayor did bring up a point, and I wouldn't have a problem with it if this man, I forget his name, the man that wrote the report, would want to come into our workshop next month. We can extend an invitation to him, and then, he's the one that wrote the report, so I think we would get the best answers from him than anybody, even though I know Cullen, and his Chester and Hatch, has a good report, but this guy wrote it, let's hear from him. I'd have no problem with him coming to the workshop.
If you do that,
I'll give you the
I'll
information.
have the engineer at that meeting.
Oh, of course, yeah. Our engineer should be at the meeting. Well,
Why would you take him if we're going to get that other guy? You might as well get rid of him.
no, I'm not getting rid of him. No, I'm just saying he brought up a
what's wrong
point.
with the place.
I'm just saying he brought up a point that this guy, the man that wrote it, I wouldn't mind hearing from the man that wrote it. And I wouldn't mind having our engineer there also because he's the one that could ask
If-
the better
if
questions
the
that we
subject
would.
matter expert was coming in, honestly, it would be more valuable for me to have Doug Deucebeber or Bob Warren from our office come in and speak.
Today is getting rid of them already.
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. You can go. You can go. You can,
I'm just
if
saying,
you want to send Bob
I'm
Warren
not-
or whatever,
I'm
that's
not
fine.
here to.
But I think a person from Hatchchester should be there also, though.
Fine job.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, you're coming in, you still can't build them. I don't understand.
What's that?
If you're bringing people in to see check for land and stuff like that, where they say you can't build on it anyway, but you're gonna check for it anyway.
We're gonna get
That
one of the
aside,
vibrators.
and I'm glad to look into that too, and that's certainly something we can do. I just want to be clear. I don't think that the conclusion of our environmental experts is not that the property is undevelopable or unusable from an environmental standpoint. That, you know, not from this. It's just that it is not free and clear, and it is not free and clear certainly for a residential or park setting at this time.
I don't think Munhall Borough is really interested in building on it. As far as getting somebody else to do it, fine. But I don't think us are willing to build on it, are we?
If you're gonna lease the property, it's still applicable, right? If you own it, you would still, what our recommendation, and, you know, the solicitor and I would have to go through it further, would still be that you go through this process.
Even if you decide to sell the property?
If you sell the property, you would disclose it. You would disclose.
And if you would lease it, we would still have to do this?
If you would lease it, you would have to, you would be the owner.
I mean,
So
it's the owner.
you would want to indemnify yourself from liability.
For the safety of the people, I think what Colin's trying to say, for the safety of the people we would lease to, we would have to do our thing to be sure, so they could come back and tell us. They can't, if they all come back with cancer in 5 years, they couldn't come back and
Kids
sue
are
Munhall
getting
Borough.
sick or whatever.
So, this might be a stupid question, but why didn't Junior Achievement have to tell us all this stuff prior to us getting this land?
I don't think it's stupid. I think it's a good.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's a good
I don't
question.
understand why we're, talking about this now.
We should have been given this
after
information.
the
Good
fact.
question.
They gave it to you. They didn't sell
We
it.
never
They
got
gave
it.
it to you.
I guess.
You didn't have to accept it. They
We
gave
never
it to
got
you.
it.
I mean, that's
We
just
gotta pay
something I'm
$1,
thinking about,
I
Don't
know?
pay nothing.
Like I said, I don't know if that's a stupid question or not,
That's
but
not.
I mean.
It's
No,
not a good
not a
question.
stupid question. It was withheld from them. Turtle Creek Valley Authority paid for the study as well, or not the COG
Yeah,
did
they
the
came
study.
through the COG.
I mean, where's it at here? They did the study. Turtle Creek Valley Council of Governments.
I think they
Does
were
anybody
doing a
else have
study
any
for,
more on
they were
this?
doing a study for two things. One was for that bioswale, and the other was for the bike path. They were looking into the bike path also down in that area, but they decided to take it on the other side of Waterfront Drive.
Away from the trains.
Away from the trains, they took it on the other side, you know where it is on Waterfront Drive, they were there down by the river. That's where they took that, and that's what the study was done for.
I think that property's got to be a pain in the butt.
I mean, it's the council decision. If we do want to hear more about, the land, the property, if you want to bring in the gentleman that wrote the report, I have no problem with that. And our engineer actually, or someone from the Hatchchester group should be there if we want. So they could ask the intelligent questions, because I can't.
Yeah, me neither.
Because I can't.
And again, just to be clear and to reiterate, I think the takeaway from what our guys found was not that it's undevelopable, not that it's unusable, not that, it's not free and clear at the moment. There's work that needs to be done.
More testing.
In other words, you'd have to do more testing.
At least, I mean, four soil borings or 4 soil samples on a 7-acre site. I mean, I'm not, it's not my area of expertise, but it seems a little bit light. Maybe it's appropriate for a drainage swale. I don't think it's appropriate for a park or for a building or, whatever the use might be.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Public Works Supervisor, Bob.
I don't have a report.
Thank you. Chief?
Any questions?
Mr. President, I'll be very brief.
Hey, you did a good job this morning on the streets. I applaud you
they're
for
always
that.
good. Everyone
and,
did.
Yeah, I tried.
keep up the good work.
You men did a good job.
There's the chief.
I think Pat's up.
That's up.
617 calls for the month, 58 arrests, 239 citations issued. If you have any questions, motion 8, 9, and 10 have all been cite approved. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Report of the fire chief. Ed?
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a pretty slow month, 25 calls. We put in about a little under 1,900 man hours. You have my report. Our response times are about 5.5 minutes from time of dispatch to on site, so we're still looking good there. The one thing that came to my attention recently was some questions about number 4 sign and rental of that, and 201 Munhall Central sign downstairs and how to rent that. And I wanted to just clear the air a little bit because some council people were asking me about it. Those signs are owned by the fire stations themselves. They paid to have them installed, and they did that as a fundraiser. So anybody that puts a sign up on one of their signs, feel free to contact the station. They're for announcements only, happy birthday or softball sign up, stuff like that. And those people pay to put those signs up. And each station will donate the occasional slot to, for instance, Munhall Borough, because recently we've been putting up and announcing some council meetings and so forth, the workshop session, what have you. So those announcements can be made for the borough. Naturally, the fire department is certainly a good partner with the borough. So we'll do that. But when the sign gets rented, those signs come down because that profit maker, goes up on the sign. So I apologize if anybody's borough announcement or something like that got taken down for another something like that going up. But they do, those signs probably buy each station one set of turnout gear based upon the money that they generate every year. So they're well worth it for those departments. The number 4's new sign can run multiple things and do a lot more, obviously, than the old sign. But I just wanted, if there's any questions or anybody ever has a problem with the sign, Harvey certainly knows how to get a hold of me when there's a problem with the sign because he's got shafted more than anybody up at number 4 for the sign not going up. But anyways, that should be corrected, by the way, with the new digital sign. So you can do that right from they do it from their phone. So, but anyways, I just wanted to clear that up. We would advertise that stuff for the borough, and there is a note downstairs. When there's nothing on the note downstairs, the general rule of thumb is when there's nothing scheduled or to be put up on the sign that evening, that put whatever if the borough wants to make an announcement or something like that, it's for the use of the borough. We'd be happy to work with you on that. So just wanted to clear the air on that. And if any of you folks have questions or anything like that on those signs, everybody here has my phone number or my email. Please give me a call. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Any questions on the fire code? Harvey has it.
Don't email me. Call.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything? Code enforcement officer, Dave.
You have a copy of my report. I also attached an ordinance that several other municipalities have passed. It's a vacant and abandoned property ordinance. Make it short and sweet is tenant moves out, the property sits there for a while, the landlord doesn't put anyone in there, the police have to drive by it more often because it's a abandoned property, neighbors are concerned kids are going to get into them, so it's added cost to the police to patrol them a little bit more. So what municipalities are doing are putting this vacant abandoned property ordinance in, and landlords have to pay like $150, $200 a year if the property sits there and there's no one inside. Nick, maybe you could add a little bit on to this. I know Greg is familiar with it. I'm not sure if on the spot or anything.
The towns that I typically go to, they have not enacted that. I understand if council is interested in doing it, I think they could. You can understand, of course, why landlords are going to be irritated that they have a piece of property they can't rent, and now it's going to cost them even more money. But no one wants to pay more money. It's your discretion.
But as long as I think if you read the ordinance, I got a copy of the 10 Hills ordinance. It states in there as long as they're trying to advertise or trying to rent it, it's they don't have to pay it, but it's just sitting there and it's not being used. Like I know we have a couple landlords, properties are sitting there. Our cops are concerned with kids breaking into on a regular basis.
Dave, I didn't read this, I just saw a little bit ago. Is there anything in there that sort of qualifies, like they're trying? Like, do they have
signs?
Okay, all right.
Advertisements and papers. The sign is trying to pay for rent. Small little sign. They're trying.
Okay.
What if they're working on that property?
That's a little different. They're working. It's not abandoned.
What if they don't want to rent the property?
Just pay $150 because their cops have to ride by. Pat will tell you there's probably studies out there. Abandoned properties are broken into a lot more than if a family's living there.
We have some abandoned properties in town that we have to pay special attention to because we have had kids go in there, kids get injured in there, crimes occur in there. Quite a few on Margaret Street over the last few years. Public Works has had to go and board some of these up because sometimes we can't secure them. The locks are, the doors aren't there, or the locks are not working. The windows are broken. There's no way for us to secure it. Public Works had to go and board up quite a few of those homes. But when they do that, I believe we bill them for the material and the time and attach that to the property, correct?
Okay, any other questions for the code enforcement? Okay, I'm gonna actually divert a little bit here, because you said you got a report for the recreation.
I get my 5 minutes of fame now.
3.
Okay. 3. I can't do it.
No one else pays attention to 3.
Yeah, as was mentioned earlier, we did have a meeting of the Recreation Committee on Friday. What we talked about 2 different things. We've been trying to get some things going in town for recreation for not only the kids, but for seniors also. So the president of the Parks and Recreation Board, different entity, his name's Mike Pavlik, he brought to us a game that he's seen while he was in college.
I want to see you pronounce it.
Yeah, I'm not really good. My French isn't real great. It's panicue. It seems like it's a lot like bocce.
Spell
Yeah, I can spell it. P-T-A-N-Q-U-E. For any French majors here.
Anybody wants to Google it?
Yeah. It's a game. It's very similar to bocce. I'm not going to say very. It's similar to bocce, but there's not as many rules to it. Bocce, you need special courts. You need a lot. I mean, the courts are very expensive to make. This is a lot easier. They say you can play it in a gravel, in a parking lot, on a pathway. We're going to look into it. I'm going to get together with Mr. Vicey to see if we can do some of this. And the place that we picked out and seen if it's good is up on Vine Street. The playground up there hasn't been used a whole lot lately. See if we can get some use out of it. So that's the first thing. Second thing we talked about was getting a summer program together, and the place we're looking at is Trotman Playground. The playground itself is there. The facilities there do need some upgrades. The men's and ladies' rooms up there, they're not in great shape. We're going to have to look at it. The borough people are going to have to look at it. There's some other upkeep that's going to need done. So we're going to ask, this is another thing on Mr. Vicey's plate. We're going to have to look into some of this stuff. And the one thing I need to talk to council about, we looked into the program for getting lunches for the kids. Okay, it was handed out to everybody. It was given to everybody. I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at it. Becky was the one who found out all this information. This stuff has to be filled out by Friday. It has to be into the county by Friday. So I'm asking, for the council's grace to have Becky fill this stuff out, send it in, see if we qualify for the free lunches. Now, if we do this, that means we're taking the next steps in getting this playground program together. I know they might seem like little steps, baby steps, but hopefully we're taking them in the right direction. So, if we go through this, we're going to need to go through the rest of the stuff for the playground.
I just confirmed with Nick on that. We would need a motion.
We need a motion. We can put a motion on whenever.
Right now.
Well,
We'll finish up further.
Finish up report. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, that's pretty much my report. That was 5 minutes. Any questions?
I read through that program, and I was a little unclear. So, will we be funding it, or will we get some funding assistance from the county?
The county. This is a free program through the county for the lunches.
I'm sorry, John. It made some mention about qualifying communities, and I was like, are we qualifying or not?
I don't know. That's where we have to fill out this paperwork.
Here's what I was reading the Green Tree paper, and they qualify. And I think
West Homestead falls
Our
under
borough,
it.
that borough, it would
Yeah.
seem if they do, then,
This is
I'm
right.
not sure what the restrictions are, but
This is
it would
like
seem like they'd be very great.
I got the basic information from Mr. Dindak from West Homestead. He's the one, young John, he's the one who runs the program up there in West Homestead, up in Calhoun Playground. So we're going to try to bring this to Munhall because I know a lot of our kids do go over there.
We're only
So-
gonna do it for Trotman Field.
Only going to do it for, we're going to try the Trotman this year, hopefully. We get this off the ground. It's going to be a 6 to 8 week program. We're not sure yet how long it's going to be, so we're working on it.
Motion to apply.
Okay, motion, I guess I have to make a motion here, so I will. Make a motion to apply for the summer food service program through Allegheny County.
Second.
Question on the
before I-
motion?
Excuse me?
Question on motion, it's a
Question
new
on the
motion.
motion?
Go ahead, it's a new motion, go for it.
Are we gonna be able to have a facility to house the food program?
Up in Troutman, we do. We have the
There's a
refreshment
kitchen there,
stand there.
refreshment
Okay,
stand.
only because some of the churches have this also, they've been having it for years. Ann Ashley, the Homestead Park Methodist Church.
Mhm.
Does that interfere with them having it
Not at all.
also?
No.
Not at all.
But we will
We're a
have it.
complete separate entity if we're granted.
Okay, but it will be staffed? You will have somebody that's gonna be there every day to do?
Oh,
this
yeah,
every day of the week?
Rick, someone has to go through a program, through a qualifying program.
And any training that has to be done?
Training, yes.
I think you're
Okay.
supposed to
We'd like
be
to get
college
interns.
boys.
Yeah, we're gonna try to get our
College
interns.
Okay, we,
I thought the college kids were gonna run it.
That's what we're gonna, yeah.
There's some that do interns for that.
Yeah, I understand what you explained that to me.
Yeah. And someone has to be there every day to receive the food, there has to be refrigeration for it, This is all the stuff we have to get in place by Friday.
Okay, thank you.
okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Ballas, second by Mr. Tishan. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? Motion
Thank you
carries
very much.
unanimously.
And we'll keep
Thank
rolling
you.
on here, and we will report back to you monthly on our progress.
Well, any committee that wants to do a monthly
We'll have
report,
another
I am
meeting.
welcome to at any time, So if any committee that wants to do a report, no matter what, any committee chair that wants to do a monthly report, not necessary, but if you want to do one, anytime, you're welcome to do it.
Thank you, Becky.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay, public comments on agenda items. Hi, Donna.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Sorry I wasn't here last month.
We missed you.
We missed you.
We missed a good meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard it was a long meeting, but anyway. Motion one. Whenever we go to advertise the paving project, can you make sure that when the streets are paved and the people that do have the drainage coming out underneath and by their curb, it doesn't get paved over like it has in other years? I believe the mayor spoke about that for the drainage from the rainwater supposed to be coming out through the sidewalks and so forth. In the past, whenever they paved the streets, there are holes that they've literally covered up, where the residents, when they had their water diversion, it couldn't come out because they literally covered the holes. Can we make sure that is taken care of whenever the paving's done?
So the code that was referenced earlier, it's the International Plumbing Code, 2015. What the mayor was speaking of earlier was an Allegheny County addendum to the plumbing code. So any licensed plumber who's doing work in Allegheny County should be familiar with those codes. If the residents are taking that upon themselves, the code enforcement and myself have very little opportunity
But I'm
to
telling
enforce
you,
that.
okay.
So I'm not going to be putting wedge curbs up against curbs or anything like that, or paving over people's drains. That's not my intention. I don't think that's ever been our intention. But it is a borough road, and we're not obligated to provide that. So just to be clear.
Okay, well, because even before all this took place, there was drainage coming out there, and they have done that. Now, with the
I understand.
With the wedge curbs, they really botched my street up.
Okay.
And this is my big pet peeve, is a paving project. Everybody here knows about how every time the paving project comes through, I will stand up and say something. They put a wedge curb
Did we
with
do
a
it last
cement,
year?
with a cement curb.
Did we do
So
it
if you
last
take
year?
a wedge curb, your little what is it, your make-believe curb, as I call it, with your asphalt curb, and you put it right up against the cement curb, which just totally destroyed it.
Well, the problem, I mean, not to get overly technical, but when you overlay and overlay and overlay, you lose curb reveal, and then eventually, you know, there's 3 inches of curb left, so we install a wedge curb.
Why didn't you just go ahead and put the cement, put the asphalt right where below the cement curb that was
I
already
can't
there?
speak what's been done.
But the
year to
bottom
year.
half of my street, they fixed the cement curbs and didn't do it like that.
Well,
They didn't put the
next
wedge
time I'm
curb
out,
in.
we'll come out and look and see if there's anything we can do. And for the current paving projects, we'll do them in the best standard practices and minimize impact to any residents.
And they also, what they did, there was not water laying before they paved the street. Water never laid in little puddles or so forth next to the curb and so forth. And when they finished paving, you now have water laying there where years ago it didn't have.
We'll take a look at it and see if there's.
I've been asking that for years for the one neighbor, and I'm sure he'll watch the video.
All right.
But anyway, that's just one thing I'd like to be brought up.
Yeah, we won't.
Motion 4. We're going to approve and implement a code of conduct policy. What is the code of conduct policy?
Exactly what it says. It's a code of conduct, a code for the conduct of the employees to abide by.
Do we have a copy of that? Is this a new policy, or is there a policy written?
We never had one.
Okay.
So we brought one up about 2 years ago when I first started. It was brought to my attention, so we got one together. Found out that we had to bargain it through the collective bargaining agreement. So when we did the collective bargaining agreement, we showed them this code of conduct, and they approved it.
The public works
So now
employees
council,
saw it already.
now council is going to put it in action tonight.
Okay, so there is a copy of it for public review?
I'm quite sure we can give it to you.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
interesting too.
And this is for all employees?
All but the police.
All but the police?
We have to wait for their bargaining.
No, they have their.
We
Yeah,
already have
I
one
would
in
say.
place. We've had one in place forever.
So this is for bargaining, and it is also for non-bargaining employees also?
It's for non-uniform and all non-uniform employees.
Okay.
Actually, the administration already put it into action a couple of years ago because we didn't have to bargain it.
Okay, thank you. Motion 5, it looks like we've collected $20,000 more in taxes this year than we did last year. So that is a good thing. And you gave me my other total. And may I make one comment about the committee meetings?
Sure.
I believe at the beginning of the year, you advertised when all the committee meetings were, the finance committee meeting, the recreation and parks committee meetings. Did we advertise that so the public knows when they are?
Some are as needed.
But did we advertise like when we do advertise when we have committee meetings, correct? You find the finance committee meetings, I believe, is what, the second Tuesday
Yep.
of every month, and the public is able to come to that.
Yeah, it's on the website. It's
Just
a public
like,
meeting.
just like the rec meetings and so forth.
Yeah.
Am I correct? So I'm just assuming what the mayor talked about earlier was just like a little get-together that they had.
It's our committee meeting.
But it's a committee meeting, but a committee meeting is, like he had said.
We never advertised it, I can tell you that.
Well, that one you didn't advertise, but your parks and recreation is what that.
The board, the Parks and Recreation Board
Okay.
is advertised. It's the second Tuesday, first Tuesday of the month.
Okay.
The board.
Well, years ago, and I believe the mayor was just new to council, there was a committee meeting there was a meeting when they were gonna accept a donation to help the borough out for, lending some money to help us financially out. I went down to that meeting, and they said they were having it in the afternoon. I went down to that meeting, and I told them when I came into the office, we had an interim manager there, that I'm here for the finance committee meeting, because they were gonna talk to whoever was gonna loan the borough money. And I was told I couldn't sit into the meeting. And I'm just letting the solicitor know that, yes, that was a public meeting, and I was allowed to sit into it. okay? Because what the borough manager did, the acting borough manager did, called the solicitor's office and said, I have somebody here who wants to sit in on this meeting. And the solicitor that they talked to said, yes, it is a public meeting and she is permitted to sit in there. So it's not that they have a quorum or not, but any committee meeting is open to the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any public comments on agenda items? I got two. Dave, and I think you.
Yeah, just have a question. Last year, I believe it was in the fall, there was I guess you call it a committee meeting of the three boroughs concerning parks and recreation. And there was grant money available at that time where they were able to hire a landscape architect, Jim Passion. And I haven't heard any more about that. I just wondered where we stood with that.
The consultation was completed. It's in the hands of the DCNR. Once the DCNR goes through, we'll get the finished product back. They'll give it back to us, and ASHIC will give us the recommendations how we can move forward with their recommendations. So right now, the answer is it's in the hands of the DCNR.
Any idea when you might?
When they're finished with it, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not a dead issue.
No, it is not a dead issue.
Okay, good.
Yes,
yeah. Last week I approached the council about starting the Munhall Borough video account on YouTube. Since we have the solicitor here today, am I able to legally do that?
You were going to start a web page?
Yeah, on YouTube for Munhall Borough video, for the videos I've been filming.
We already have a web
You mean
page.
you want their consent to do it? What are you
Yeah,
asking?
well, last week they said that they didn't think there would be a problem. They wanted to ask Ray.
He's asking pretty much to post this meeting and other meetings that he's videotaped on YouTube.
Using the Munhall Borough name.
If council has to consent, certainly if you're going to use the Munhall Borough name, council would have to consent to it.
How is it different from what we were doing before? I mean, other than we were posting them in-house, but they were still being posted on YouTube, right?
Were they posted on YouTube?
Yes, they had to go to YouTube. I uploaded them to YouTube.
So there is no difference.
They're all on YouTube.
Yeah.
Can't we post it on like a special Munhall Council webpage or something instead of YouTube?
They could be linked.
Yeah, I can link it. If he doesn't do the YouTube, I can link from the YouTube to our website.
Yeah, so they could be on the website and YouTube at the same time.
Do you have a problem with that? I mean, if you would just put them on our website, or
I'm saying not to use YouTube, just use our website.
They have to go to YouTube first.
You can't do that, or I don't know.
I don't know.
Just a question.
I mean, I don't have a problem with the YouTube.
No, I don't either. I was just asking a question.
Oh, I know.
We can't do it.
Oh, you can't.
No, but his question is.
So we don't have to be edited. If it's going to be under the borough name, okay,
Right.
there's no editing.
Right.
Okay, I don't know if you heard, it has to be the complete tape, no editing. So if the week, like tonight, we're going on 2 hours
I
almost.
put the whole thing on there.
We got to put the whole thing on there. Yeah, no editing, no cliff notes.
Right.
Yeah. I think that sounds okay then, right?
I would put the whole thing.
As long as there's no editing.
I would have the Pledge of Allegiance in there. You're not consider editing? Like, I would start it at the point of roll call.
Yeah, that would be fine. That'd be fine.
So we're good on that.
I don't think we need a vote on that. Okay, we're good. Okay, anybody else have questions on agenda items tonight? Agenda items only. Okay, let's go. Items for consideration, Madam Secretary.
Motion to authorize Munhall engineer advertising for 2018 paving project.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Ballas, second by Mr. Engels. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Motion to appoint 2 councilmen as PSAB delegates.
Which are Councilman Tishon and Councilman Ballas, due to the fact that they already are going to this convention in June.
And just to make comments on that motion, Mr. Tishon is going to be recognized at this conference for 40 years of service.
Wedded bliss.
40 years of, more wedded bliss. 40 years of service to Munhall Borough. So he's going to be recognized. We were informed that they wanted to recognize people with the service time like he has, 30, 40, 50 years. So he's going to be recognized there. So he would be an excellent delegate to have there, especially with his recognition for that meeting.
I'll be happy to serve.
Thank you.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Ingles.
Second.
Second by Mr. Petruzzi. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
abstain. I abstain because I'm one of the people on there.
True.
I don't think you need to abstain to be a
We
delegate.
don't
You have
need-
no monetary.
Yeah, he'll have
I don't need to, okay.
So you change your voting. Okay, all ayes.
I tried.
Number 3.
Motion to hire the following for summer workers at the rate of $8.25 per hour. Matthew Toth, Nate McCullough, Camden Tishon, Christian Miller, Alice Legaros, and Evan Kostelnik. Sorry about that. I also want to advise council that we had 2 additional people apply, one via email, and that's Sally Skrupa, and one by an actual application, and that's Andrew Gill.
Okay. We may be hiring more, but that, for now, I guess.
We're just going with
we're just going with
these people that are on there now.
Okay, so we're not adding.
Comment too, they've been working at 825, and a lot of these guys have came back for several years. Do we want to give them a quarter raise, bump them up to 850? And financially,
I
I
go with
think that would be,
I don't have a problem.
from the finance chair, I mean, to bump them up would be a big, because a lot of these guys have been returning, and they've worked as 8.25 for the last 3 years, probably, some of them.
$10 more a week.
Maybe we should cut one guy down, huh?
No, I don't want to do that.
How about we cut your salary?
For the summer.
I mean, I'm just, question on the motion. If somebody wants to change that to maybe 850, I mean, it's,
I'd just like to mention that Silas Krupa, the guy that filed by email, he's our Eagle Scout.
yes,
in
he
the
is.
project here.
Yes, he is.
He'd
And
be
he worked
fine,
here
man.
last year as well.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Well, then I would
Well,
say that he should.
why don't we
be on.
add Silas on tonight since he didn't work here last
He
year?
worked your last
Well, if we're familiar with
Yeah.
this.
Bob, was Silas?
Problem with him.
Okay, good. Well,
Silas Krupa?
Yeah.
KRUPA, right?
Right.
He's a good kid. I know Silas.
Okay, very good.
No, he lives in the
Motion to
boat.
raise it to $8.50.
Yeah, he'll blood in
For
them
all of
too.
them?
See?
Okay, we have a motion to change the price, no, not the price, but the salary to 850 for summer help.
I'll make a motion.
I already did that.
Okay,
Second.
second, okay, Mr. Ballas, second by Mr.
Question on the
Petrucci.
motion,
Yes.
is that for everybody, or is that just for the ones that are returning?
Anybody that we are.
So it's for
After
everybody
these
that
people,
you're
whoever
hiring?
we are, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know I heard some discussion, is that the ones that are returning, or is there any new hires in here? And we have the money in the budget for that?
We
Watch what I was
may.
just doing in my head. I think that comes out with, so if it's 40-hour weeks, there's 7 people in 8 weeks. Quick math, I think it's like $560 extra.
If we have to cut them down from, 8 weeks to 7 weeks or 7 to 6, I would think that's.
For
I think we were on-
$560, I don't think we'll need.
I thought we were gonna hire 2 more.
We're gonna have kids on vacation.
Another thing is we have more high school kids this year than we did last year. They don't start till June.
Right.
College kids start in April. We'll have plenty of money in the budget for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question.
Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
What are we saying, I two?
For the hire these people at a rate of $850, can I run it together or do I do it $850
We have to
first?
do the one.
You never voted
On
on
the
the 825. I don't even know if there was a second. If
It
there
was a
wasn't,
second.
then you need to withdraw that first motion, and and then make a new motion for 850, including adding Mr. Krupa to the list.
Yeah.
Okay.
So whoever made the first motion,
I think
was
it
it
was
you, Joe?
Was it Joe?
There was a motion on it.
I think Joe made the first motion.
I'll make it.
So you want to withdraw your motion?
Okay, well, I'll withdraw my motion, my original motion, and change the motion
A
to
new motion.
new motion hiring the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 employees.
Plus Mr. Krupa.
Mr.
Well,
Cooper made
he's-
7.
Oh, okay.
He's the seventh
Sorry,
one,
sorry.
at a rate of $8.50
And I,
an hour, per hour.
Okay, motion on the floor.
second.
By Mr. Ballas, second by Mr. Bodine. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried, no nays.
Motion Motion to approve, implement a.
Wait.
Sorry.
Excuse me.
Wait.
Yeah, I abstain on Camden Tishon.
I abstain on that one.
Okay, one abstain on Camden Tishon, one from Mr. Tishon, and abstain from Mr. Ingles on Evan Kostelnik, right?
Right.
So it's 5-0-2.
Right.
Got it.
Actually, it's 5-0-1-1.
115.
One,
Okay,
1-1.
Because they're sending in different people. Okay.
Sorry. Motion to approve, implement a code of conduct policy for the borough employees immediately.
Motion. We got it.
Motion by Mr. Ingles, second by Mr. Tishon. All in
Yeah,
favor?
well, just under comment, I just think it's important, a part of the minutes should state that this is in conjunction with the borough employees, and it is part of the collective bargaining agreement. It is approved by.
Yeah, not part of the collective bargaining agreement, but
Collectively
part of the union's approval.
Agreed upon by the.
Agreed upon by the union. Wasn't in the, we didn't have to bargain.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays?
Motion to exonerate the tax collector for 2017 in the amount of $276,925.01.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Ballas.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sean. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Motion carries unanimously.
Motion to approve for Chief Campbell to attend a mass casualty incidents conference in the amount of $895 plus $220 for hotel accommodations to be paid out of the asset forfeiture account.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ingles, second by Mr.
Just a
Bodine.
little thing, I read through that, there's a lot of good stuff gonna be there. So,
That is
you
a
know,
great
bring
use
it-
of that
Bring it home,
asset
Pat.
fund.
Bring it home to
That's
us.
what they should be used.
And Chief,
Yes,
I was
it'd be
looking
very-
up for you here too. When I saw that 220, I said, boy, are we putting him in a cheap hotel? He said, well, it's only 2 days. I said, oh, okay.
It's only 2 days.
I was thinking it was like a 3 or 4 day thing. I
I
said, I don't want to put you in too cheap a hotel or something.
But it's supposed to be the frontline commanders from the Dallas ambush,
Yeah.
Dallas Police
Yeah.
ambush.
But I think it's excellent,
Pulse
yeah, to go
Night
there.
Club, Columbine Massacre, and there's a few others. It's supposed to be great training.
But I'm just getting around. I was looking up for you because I thought it was more than a 2 day conference.
Time.
And it's a great camper you're going to sleep
I
in.
thought 220. How many days is he going there for?
2 days.
I know it's 4 or 5 days.
Pat, do you think that's something the fire chief should attend to?
That's what I just told them. I think it's for supervisors for fire, police, and EMS. That's what I just told Eddie. I think that would be excellent for him as well.
Yeah, he should. Well, that's up to him though if he wants to do it though. We can vote on that next meeting.
I just
we can vote on that
We'll
next meeting.
We'll save money if it's room together, right?
Can we cut that down to 110 for? Okay. Motion on the floor was by Mr. Ingles, second by Mr. Butterdean, right? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Nays?
Motion to approve the Steel Valley Enterprise Zone Corporation as administrative agent for the Main Street tax increment and financing program for 2018 for the amount of $9,000, which will be paid out of the TIF fund. The Steel Valley Enterprise Zone coordinates and directs the utilization of Main Street TIF or tax increment finance funds.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. DeShawn.
Question.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ballas.
I've got a question. Rick, You're chairman, what is that for, the 9,000?
I'm not sure. Joe talked to Chuck Sterry. That's for the running of the program.
It's administrative.
It's for administrative. For 4,000 goes to Sterrett, and the other 5,000 goes for paying bills. I'm not sure. He talked with Joe, so Joe should know.
And they've been doing this for quite a few years, if I'm not mistaken.
10 years or better.
It's Chuck Sterrett.
Well,
Yeah,
we've been
doing it for a long
members
while.
since the inception.
Right.
So it's administrative. It's for
Administrative.
paying their bills, paying their insurance, paying their rent, paying this and that. You know, they run all the loan programs. They run the loans. You know, there's business loans that are done. There's all kind of things that they get involved in. I'm not sure exactly what that $9,000 is for. To be honest with you.
Thank you.
Therefore, if you turn to page, in your packet, there's a whole scope of work for them. For the sake of time, I won't read all 14.
Thank you. Whatever he said.
Okay. Motion on the floor in a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
I need to, who was the second? I'm sorry.
Ballots.
Yes.
Yeah, me.
Oh, okay, thank you, I'm sorry. Apologize.
Nays? Okay, motion carries unanimously.
Motion to approve handicap sign to be placed at 809 East 10th Avenue as approved by Officer Williams and Chief Campbell.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Tishon,
Second.
second by Mr. Vallis. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Motion to approve handicap sign to be placed at 109 East Virginia Avenue as approved by Officer Williams and Chief Campbell.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Rodriguez.
It's not on that one. She's reading it. 109 Virginia.
109 Virginia.
Is it West?
I
Is it
apologize, we added
East
one in.
Virginia?
I'm sorry, it's 109 East Virginia Avenue.
Okay, yeah, there's East and West.
You gonna take no to West and yes,
Sure.
109, is that Canooni's place? Chief Campbell, that 109 East Virginia, is that the one right behind Sherman?
Yes.
Where Canooni's at?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
We have a motion by Councilman Bonadilla.
Oh, by Mr. Rodriguez, okay. Second?
Second.
By Mr. Engels. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays?
I have an additional one, I have one more additional one. It's a motion to approve handicap sign to be placed at 129 East 20th Avenue. That's 129 East 20th, as approved by Officer Williams and Chief Campbell.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Ballas, second by Mr. Tishon. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Nays? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the February 21st, 2018 minutes.
Motion.
Motion
Second.
by Mr. Stein, second by Mr. Petruzzi. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Nays? Motion carries.
Motion to pay bills for the period February 21st through March the 20th, 2018, summarized as follows. The total is $351,296.17.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Ingles.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bonadilla. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Nays? Motion carries.
Motion to approve payroll for the period of February 8th and February 22nd, 2018 as follows. The total was $277,942.88.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Stein. Second by Mr. Ballas. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Nays? Motion carries. Okay, any new business? Other matters? Okay, only thing I want to bring up is the next meeting for the community day is April 2nd. Originally it was scheduled for the 26th, but I'm double booked, and the other co-chair for the co-chair, Carol Street, from the library is going to be out of town. So we moved the next meeting for community day to April 2nd, the day after Easter at 6 o'clock.
You want to know that was it?
Is that better for you?
No, that seemed that way.
Oh, I was done. It'll be done by now. We're only an hour.
Okay.
Library, right?
It starts at 6 at the library, April 2nd. We moved it back because I have a council president meeting on Monday with the different Well, West Homestead and
Told you we'd same time.
Homestead, same time as moved back weekend, and I talked to Carol.
Yeah.
They commit, I could come late, I told her, she said, you know what, I'm gonna be out of town, so we're moving it back 1 week.
What time is it, Joe?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
I'll take that, Mr. Shaw, motion to adjourn, second one, Mr. Bodine, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, nays.
Thank you, people, for coming.